Hey everybody, welcome back to Sunday Afternoon Smokes. Another cigar review today, and sitting on the patio here in Easley, South Carolina. Lovely day for a cigar. A little bit of cloud cover we've got. It's a little bit breezy, but it's only 67. So some great weather, a nice cool breeze. We've got a fresh cup of coffee, and I got a cigar here. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Sunday Afternoon Smokes, or my cigar business at Mobile Cigar Box. You can find me on X at Mobile Cigar Box as well, but I'll put all of that in the show notes later on. But like I said, another cigar review in what we've got cooking today. Henry Clay Warhawk Robusto. And man, look at this. It's just a lovely golden brown wrapper on this cigar. I have not lit it. I've already, before I started recording, I threw a guillotine cut on there, and the test on the guillotine on the draw was, it's not wide open. It's just, there's tight, and then there's wide open, and then there's somewhere in the middle. This has just a touch of restriction to it. Doesn't bother me at all. So things are bunched well in there. I've done a little bit of reading on this before the show. Some people talk about how just very well constructed this cigar is, even burn all the way down. So we're going to get into it here in just a second. And on the nose, just on the body, on the barrel here of the cigar, just nosing it a little bit pre-light. That's very light, right? Just a touch of sweetness on the nose. Smoothness is not a smell, right? It's a kind of a feature. But if smoothness was a smell, I would say that's what I've got going on here in this Henry Clay Warhawk. Because, man, that's smooth. It smells great. You pick up on the foot. Whenever you smell the cigar, like if you just smell the barrel, you're going to get a different smell than what's on the foot here. I mean, look at all that great filler tobacco on the inside right there. So mostly whenever you smell the cigar on the barrel, you're going to be just pretty much smelling the wrapper. That's all that's available to you. But whenever you come at it on the foot right here, right, where everything is exposed, then you're going to get a lovely bouquet of everything, or bouquet, however you say it, lovely bouquet of everything that this cigar is all about. So there's definitely picking up on some sweetness on this foot, just on the nose. So one of the common themes, if you happen to smell your cigars before you light them, what I have found is just that tobacco flavor is very reminiscent of raisins. And you do get, in my humble opinion, for whatever that's worth, you do get a good amount of that just raisin sweetness on the foot. So sweetness, smoothness. I'm looking forward to getting into this, and I'll tell you a little story about the first time I ever smoked the Henry Clay Warhawk. So I've got just a double torch lighter right here, and we're going to go ahead and light it up. Just go ahead and start, doing what you do whenever it comes to toasting the foot up. Just some nice little rotation, both with the cigar. Right, you want to roll that cigar back and forth in between your fingers, and then I just always like to get a circular pattern with my lighter and try and get all the way around that foot and get some even temperatures or even lighting on the foot, right? I want to light evenly all the way around. I think we're about there. There it is. Now we're off to the races. And this is just a little dual jet lighter right here. I just grabbed it. I have quite a few different lighters. This is a dual jet lighter, a little more precision. A little more precision to the light. You don't have to be blasting the bejesus out of the foot of my cigar with a quad torch or a triple jet or whatever. So just a dual. And it is a little bit breezy out there. Maybe I should have grabbed something a little bit stronger, but this worked. Just happened to be, walking by where I keep my stuff, and it was there. So I grabbed it, and works well. All right, first few puffs, first retrohale there. You probably weren't able to see it. The smoke was thin, but first impressions, a little creaminess, definitely nutty. I definitely get that on the retrohale. Very toasty, very nutty. Spices there. That's good, man. I really like it. Of course, as a guy who I just like cigars. I remember the very first time I ever smoked a Henry Clay Warhawk. I was meeting with a guy at a cigar lounge here in the upstate of South Carolina. A guy I had met at an event. I was at a market, on a weekend. I was selling cigars. It was kind of a big kickoff for the market. They had a DJ. And so I was meeting with this DJ afterward, and we were just going to kind of get to know each other, have a cigar, have a smoke, all that stuff. And I, at random, picked out this Henry Clay Warhawk, which I had never smoked before. And, you've heard about cigar smokers or people like just kind of, the cigar made me sick. I was just so lightheaded, thought I was going to throw up or whatever. And that, to that point, had never happened to me. And it's never happened to me again. Now, like, there's no way to really know exactly how much nicotine is in a cigar. Nicotine is a naturally occurring product in the tobacco leaf. The leaves at the top of the plant have more nicotine than the leaves on the bottom. So I've talked about that before. So if the manufacturer wants to make a cigar that's, kind of punchy, got some zip to it, more of the Ligero off the top of the plant is going to be their go-to. And I don't even know how much. I mean, they tell us what the blend is on this, right? We'll get into the wrapper and the binder and the filler on this, but they don't break down for you, right? Like how much is Viso, how much is Seco, how much is the Ligero, all that stuff. That is proprietary information. They don't give that stuff out. That's their blend, that's their recipe, that's what makes their cigar, right? They don't share that. Not typically. But anyway, I sat down with this Henry Clay Warhawk. I don't know what it was, man. I don't know if it was just I had no food in my system. I had, I hadn't eaten, I hadn't drank anything leading up to that point. I was just running on empty. And then I sat down with this. And dude, about halfway through this, things hit the fan. Man, I thought, one second. Pardon me. Man, things started spinning. I was so lightheaded. I literally thought that I was going to puke all over the floor. It was heavy. And but like a good bull rider, I hung on. I powered through, I buckled down, powered through, and in about 10, 12 minutes later, things started lightening up. I didn't throw up. Excuse me there. I didn't throw up. I didn't get sick. That is never, ever happen to me again when it comes to smoking a cigar. Was just kind of a freakazoid thing that happened, I suppose. So we will see what kind of heat this Henry Clay is going to bring me today, because I'm revisiting this bad boy. So far, here we are. What is that? Half an inch, 3/4 of an inch. Very well constructed, just like I read about from other people. Even burn all the way down. Like I said, just lovely to look at. Golden brown, Ecuadorian wrapper. So Henry Clay Warhawk is produced by, Altadis USA. And Altadis, they have a lot of different lines. They are, I think I've talked about this before, probably in a previous podcast, but they are, like Romeo y Julieta, H. Upman, Monte Cristo. They Altadis is doing a lot of work there. So that Onyx is another line. Trinidad. There's a lot happening when it comes to Altadis, but Henry Clay Warhawk, what we've got here is a Ecuadorian shade-grown Connecticut wrapper. The Warhawk, let me see if I can find it. I had it pulled up here. Here it is, Altadis USA. Yeah. Back to the lines. Henry Clay, H. Upman, Aging Room, Onyx, Romeo Julieta, Trinidad. Sorry, I said, yeah, Monte Cristo's in there. Vega Fina, Te Amo. I have a Te Amo cigar that I have not yet smoked. It's back in my collection, waiting for me. But Henry Clay Warhawk, a very successful release of this cigar in 2019. I believe it was rated 93 by Charlie Hamato over there at Half Wheel. I don't know if Charlie did it or if one of the other guys did it, but that's what they gave it. But their 93 rating on the Henry Clay Warhawk was on the Toro. I'm smoking the Robusto today. And then I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Cigar Aficionado had the Henry Clay Warhawk Robusto at 90. So Henry Clay, they did a great job on this Warhawk. They released at some point in time between, now and then in 2019. I don't know exactly when. Let's see if I can tell you right here. But they released a different version called Warhawk Rebellious, and that is a Nicaraguan cigar rather than a Honduran, which is what this Warhawk that I'm smoking is. But it Nicaraguan filler, binder, and Habano wrapper. So they've got the Warhawk Rebellious. They also have a Henry Clay Rustic Chair Root, and I like chair roots, man. They're just, it's just a chair root is kind of like a rough cigar, more or less. But the chair root is, it's Dominican and Honduran filler with a broadleaf for the wrapper and the binder. So the Henry Clay Rustic Chair Root. Then they've also got just the Henry Clay Classic line. You can get some of that. That's 42 by 5 5/8 or so. That's a Toro. They have a Brevis Venus, but it's a handmade classic. It's a Dominican filler, Dominican binder, with a Connecticut broadleaf Maduro wrapper, out of DR. But what we're doing right here is the Warhawk. This is the Robusto, the 5 by 54. Plenty of spice. I already mentioned that. Some good flavors, and this is a Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper. I mean, you just see that telltale golden brown that most of the there it is. Was off my camera. Sorry. See that, just that telltale, golden brown that a lot of Connecticut gives. A lot of Connecticut cigars are. Sometimes they're lighter than this one too, but this is an Ecuadorian Connecticut grown wrapper. Then we have a broadleaf. We'll have a broadleaf binder. So they used to use the broadleaf as the wrapper, but they've kind of switched it up, and they have opted to move the broadleaf to the binder and throw on top that Ecuadorian shade grown Connecticut as the wrapper. So, and then underneath all of that, right, the vast majority of your cigar is, of course, the filler, and what we've got for the filler is Honduran. So, this stacks up to be a really good cigar, and a lot of Honduran tobacco, people, much like Nicaragua, I think, would describe Honduran tobacco as Cuban-esque, right? That just kind of spicy, somewhat bold flavor profile that people from yesteryear would remember to be Cuban cigars. Honduras gives off that same vibe. The growing climate there in Honduras, they've got volcanic rich soil, they've got favorable climate, they've got a lot of sunshine. So, they've kind of got the trifecta of cigar growing elements all together: sunshine, volcanic soil, and it just all works together. The smoke is really picking up right now on this cigar. It didn't start right out of the gate with heavy smoke. It started out a little bit thin, but now the smoke in its body is beginning to pick up. On the Altadis USA, you can find this cigar, just all over the internet, but it's also at casademontecristo.com, and they've got this cigar on their website pegged at just over medium. So it's kind of like medium full on the body. And I think eventually we will get there. The body started out, in my opinion, kind of light, very mild, but like I said, smoke production and the viscousness, is that a word? Viscousness? The level of viscosity to the smoke is starting to increasing that body, but the spice is definitely there. The creaminess is starting to come out of it. But they say, on the Casa de Montecristo, their description of this cigar is notes of earth, nuts, chocolate, sweet tobacco, pepper on the finish. Nutty, absolutely. Pepper on the finish, yeah. That spice lingers on the tongue. It lingers in the back of the tongue. It lingers in the back of my throat personally. It lingers, of course, up in the top of the nasal cavity because I practice that retrohale. And if you are a cigar smoker and you're just in the mouth and out, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. That's exactly how you smoke a cigar. But I would encourage you to work at retrohaling, that process where you bring the smoke in and you blow it out your nose. There are just so many flavor receptors in the nasal passage that you will pick up more flavor from your cigar if you retrohale versus just in and out the mouth, right? And it's just, we pick up more flavor with food. We pick up a lot of flavor with food in the mouth, but one of the first things you do when it comes to food is you smell it, right? You walk in grandma's kitchen, or the wife's making something, or dad, or whoever, father, your dad you being the dad, whoever, go to a barbecue, you're firing up the grill, whatever. It's that aroma, right? That aroma in the nasal passage draws you in, and then you get into it in the mouth. And smoke, of course, is a little more refined than that. So, yeah, I would encourage you as a cigar smoker, if you're not retrohaling, to begin doing that. You're just going to get a ton more flavor. You're going to pick up a lot about the cigar that you would not be able to pick up if you just, in and out of the mouth. So let me coach you through the process of retrohaling. And this is there's different ways to do it, but this is just how I do it. This is, and I did a little bit of reading about it and heard people talk about it, whether it was on a YouTube video or on a podcast or whatever. And you just wind up developing your own method in whatever works for you. So what I like to do is take a few puffs on the cigar in quick succession, right? And get a real copious amount of smoke going. And then I will take a long draw, right? I really just want to fill up my mouth with as much smoke as possible. So get that smoke churning, right? Get that cigar burning, a good amount of smoke output, then take as much in the mouth as you can. And then what I like to do is probably blow out about 90% of it. And then just kind of what's left in there, gently blow it out through the nose. And I've had people at events ask me about, how to do that. How do you have something in your mouth and then blow it out your nose? Or how do you take a big breath with something in your mouth? And the best way I can explain it is it's the same thing as drinking through a straw, right? Smoking a cigar is just like drinking through a straw. I mean, pretend it's a straw. It's pretty much the same thing. You're going to pull on this and fill up your mouth with smoke, but just because your mouth is full doesn't mean you can't breathe, right? You use your nose. So, right, I fill up my mouth with smoke. I will then exhale about 90% of that smoke. Then I will take a deep breath through my nose and gently allow the smoke to come out of the nose rather than the rest out of the mouth. And sometimes, you'll use your tongue in your mouth to gently lift the smoke up so it gets to the opening of the nasal passage, back up in the back. So here we go. There it is. Ooh, I love it. That is rich. There's some richness to that cigar. There's some robust flavors there. You try and suss them out. And whenever you exhale through when you exhale through the nose, you don't just blast it all out right at once. I like to just kind of take that big breath in through the nose and then just a gentle but steady supply of air out and just kind of let that smoke filter slowly out. And when it's gone and you stop, you really taste up there in the nasal passage. Let's do it again. Man. I see why Henry Clay Warhawk is like a 90 to 93 rated cigar. It's just rich, spice, complex flavors, a little cream, the nuttiness is there, maybe some leather tones in it, maybe some oak. I don't get, honestly, I don't, whenever I first started the podcast, I talk about just sniffing on the barrel and on the foot, the sweetness. I don't really pick up on the sweetness, but I do pick up on the spice and on that nutty and leather and maybe some oak. That's excellent. So, Altadis USA with the Henry Clay, they're killing it. Now, this, like I said, this blend is um Ecuadorian Connecticut on the wrapper. Um they have a broadleaf, which by now is one of my favorite kinds of tobacco, Connecticut broadleaf wrapper, binder, and then filler from Honduras. Now, in Honduras, it's a great country putting out great cigars. Um, Nicaragua has their growing regions, right? They've got Esteli, they've got Condega, they've got Ometepe, they've got several of their growing regions, with Esteli being the most famous. Honduras also has their growing regions, right? There's the Hamastron Valley, there's Copan, there's the Talanga Valley. In these areas, like I said, they have just that mineral rich volcanic soil, favorable climate, lots of sunshine. They grow that robust, healthy tobacco. And so I think, Henry Clay, with that just the climate in Honduras and the sunshine and the robust tobacco that's a result of the mineral rich soil there, might have wanted just to dial this back just a tad, um, and move that Connecticut broadleaf wrapper to the binder and mellow things out a little bit with the Ecuadorian shade grown Connecticut. So yeah, it's an excellent cigar. I don't know exactly what all the numbers are. This is a little bit of old information here from 2019, but in Honduras, a major exporter of cigars to the U.S. in 2019, that industry brought them 120 million bucks in export revenue. U.S. is the largest destination for cigars when it comes to Honduras. And they're doing, Honduras is doing cigars, they're doing cherries, they're doing cigarillos, they're doing cigarettes, they're doing tobacco for other things. Their largest, this was some information from 2023, a year and a half ago now, but they had like 55% of Honduras's market share went to the United States. Then, they also send stuff to Nicaragua, Germany, Costa Rica, Belgium, DR, Guatemala, El Salvador. They're even sending some money, some tobacco products to France and Hong Kong. So, Honduras is doing some really great stuff. Just a lot of really good Honduran cigars are out there. And if you smoke around, like if you're not brand loyal, and I'm not, I'm just cigars across the board. Doesn't matter what your brand is. I want to smoke it. But you can try some really great Honduran stuff. I think Punch Grand Puro is a Honduran cigar that's very good. Yeah, so yeah, we're definitely medium full. Just ticking over medium into the medium full department when it comes to the body. But that there is the Henry Clay Warhawk. And look at the construction. So far, we're about probably through the first third of this cigar now. Beautifully constructed, even burn all the way around. I don't have a big like cherry sticking out of the end of my cigar or anything like that. I like the double label here. Done very well. Just great job. Great job to Altadis USA. Great job on the Henry Clay Warhawk. Yeah. Thanks for listening to Sunday Afternoon Smokes cigar review of Henry Clay. I appreciate it. Share this on your socials, right? Share it on social media. Share it with your friends, your family, your friends, cigar smokers. Share Sunday Afternoon Smokes with the world. It's really awesome. I love what I do. And again, you can follow me on Instagram at Sunday Afternoon Smokes or at Mobile Cigar Box. Follow me on X, both my cigar business and the podcast are just under the handle on X at Mobile Cigar Box. You can listen to this on Spotify, Apple iTunes, or iHeartRadio, or you can watch the video on my YouTube channel, Sunday Afternoon Smokes. So thanks for listening to the audio only version or watching the YouTube. Give it a like, give me a follow. I'd appreciate it. Share me everywhere. And we will be back with another episode, whether it's podcast or cigar review, very, very soon. Have a great day.